My name is Tom Pagliasotti. I'm here in the Coeur d'Alene, Idaho area, and I'm here together on this call with Pat Fitzsimmons from Southern Oregon, with Nelson Ustenink from Northern California, and Bill Dare from the Corvallis. No, it's not Corvallis. Bill, tell me again where.
Albany,
Albany.
Albany, Oregon.
Right, Albany, Oregon. And the reason for our conversation is to honor these two men, Nelson and Bill, as two of the three nominees for recognition during the first of the elder celebration events that are going to be beginning this coming Monday. We're also going to be speaking about Paul Moth as the third man who's been nominated from the Northwest area to be recognized in this way. So our purpose is to simply have a conversation to hear about the thoughts and experiences of the two men that we're honoring, and Pat and I and Frank Devon, who will be joining us here shortly, will be posing our questions to these men. So I'd like to start and invite Nelson, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just beginning of the conversation with some of your MKP story. How did it start for you? Where did things begin? And kind of what was the sort of the arc of your experience with the project?
Okay. So I was living in Eugene at the time when I went through in February of '97. And I belonged to a tennis club where Paul Moss belonged to as well. And I didn't know Paul because we played at two different levels. And anyway, he came back from his initial going through the training down at Sunrise Ranch down in San Diego. And anyway, he really wanted to have a conversation with me because we knew Paul and his wife Anya through a different channel. And anyway, so I finally met with Paul and, obviously was excited and told me about it. And I knew then that I needed to take the training. It was just like so clear to me. It was like a clarion call that, I couldn't ignore. So I wound up taking the training in February, and our conversation had taken place in, I don't know, September or something. So it took a few months. And the training I went through was at Camp Mellicoma in Washington State. And it was raw. It was back in the days when things were, I would have to say, immature. Not quite mature yet, but it didn't really matter because it was effective for me and really made me take a look at where I was going and how I was going and how I was going to get there. And so that was the beginning. And so from that point, I took the training. I did the I group, and Paul, of course, was a part of that. And actually, Steve Newcomb was a part of that initial group too. And anyway, so I got exposed to some really top talent in the sense of really caring, and so that was a real turn on for me in the sense of like, wow, there's something going on here. And anyway, from that point, and I was working full time at the time. I had helped build a 5 megawatt hydro site out of Sweet Home, Oregon, and I was managing it. And so I had a full time gig, and I get this call from Paul. And Paul says, "Hey, Nelson, we need somebody to help with materials on the next training, right?" And and I had no clue what materials did, right? And anyway, I became the the person in charge of doing materials, right? So all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, what was going on? So anyway, I did that for 3 years in a row. And so I was at every training for 3 years. And anyway, that was the base of things.
Thank you. And Bill, where do you fit in that time frame? Did you come in after Nelson, or were you in before him?
Much later.
So tell a little bit about your story as far as the beginnings.
Well, I was working for a small company called Hewlett Packard, and the brother that invited me to take a look at it, we were having lunch together. We were actually working with another man who was fighting his conditions in the workplace, and he needed help. And so my brother Don Morris and I were sitting having lunch together one day talking about it. And Don was telling me this wonderful experience he'd had in this group that he was part of, and what a wonderful time they had meeting, and the sharing and everything. And of course I asked him, I said, so how do I get to know these guys? And he says, well, it doesn't work that way. I said, oh, okay, well, how does it work? He says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll bring something by your desk. So later that day, he brings a brochure by that explains what the Mankind Project is about, and how I can sign up for a New Warrior training adventure. And he dropped that off. He said, I'll talk to you tomorrow about it. And we talked, and he said, I'd really like you to go through this as quickly as possible. And I said, I've been through all kinds of initiations in my life. What do I need to go through another one for? And he said, that makes it easy for you. He says, you don't even have to focus on the initiation. You can just come and join our circle after you're initiated. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I'm so busy right now. When's the next training? And he told me, and I said, I definitely can't do that. I'll have to talk to Ann, and we'll take a look at what's up. And long story short, it was a year before I could do the training, and I went through in April of 2004 at Camp Melacoma, where Nelson went through many years earlier, along with a bunch of other men. And that's my story of how I got there.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. So
one of
Nelson. Go ahead.
One of the things that I wanted to share was about Paul too, because I wanted to include Paul in this conversation as well. And was that so you really couldn't call the Northwest a center back then in the early days. It was just some guys that had gone through the training back east, come home, and then wanted to put on the training, right? So there was guys like Tim Barad, Bill Barish, there was Rick Wopat, there was a number of guys, Steve Newcomb, Mike Brown, that had taken the training. And then Paul got, he took it down in San Diego. He came back to Eugene. He got hooked up with Newcomb. And anyway, they're just trying to put on a training, the next training, right? And this was before cell phones. So everything was done by phone and contacting people and doing all of that. And what I wanted to say about Paul is that Paul knew how to get things going, right? He was not afraid to pick up the phone and cold call you like he did me. He says, hey, we need somebody to do materials and you're the right guy. I mean, that was Paul. And so Paul was really instrumental in the beginning part of the whole Northwest getting going as a center in that beginning period, which was, it was I think like any a young organization or a young creative process, when things are going wild and crazy and energetically and ideas are flying and people are saying yes, people are saying no. And, Paul's like facilitating all of this. So you don't know what the hell's going on until you get there, right? And and who shows up. And anyway, it made it a lot of fun. Yeah. So and Paul was part of that initial, helping to kind of set the floor, get things going on the ground for the whole Northwest Center. So
how many men were on a typical training, Nelson?
Say again?
How many men were on a typical training?
Oh gosh, back then we would have, 18, maybe 20. The idea of having, a 40-man training wasn't even it was not even on the radar at that time, right? Yeah, that was only happened after we matured and got things going. And we, actually, when we moved to Wairiki, we actually had the space and the facility to do that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, there were only 22 men on my training as well.
Yeah.
And after we moved to Wairiki, well, like you said, and I don't think Paul was on my training as a leader, co-leader, but later he was very influential in my development.
Yeah, Paul wasn't a co-leader at Melicoma. That didn't happen until at Wairiki. Yeah. It took him a number of years.
You're back. You're muted, Pat. Yeah. Go ahead.
That's better.
Yeah.
So Nelson, was Don Hines and like Mowens Gilmore and Will Horniak, were they involved back then?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I just didn't mention those guys, but yeah, they were all there. Yeah, those were the guys, and some of these guys came out of the Emissaries of Light, like you did. You know, and that was really apt. When I think back about it, it was a miracle that you guys took that and held it and actually really got it off the ground. I mean, it was just like, because it got off on the right foot, where when things got wild and crazy, which they did, there was always this presence of safety and just a higher good that was present, and that really helped solve a lot of issues. I don't know if you remember Rich Matkins, but he was in Portland, and he was one of our guys that was always in the drama, right? And so all of that helped with the emissary guys, Don and that, and to help smooth things. It was really wonderful. Yeah.
So Pat, what was your connection with Paul then? I know that you have a deep connection with him as well. Did you know him before he did his weekend?
No, I met Paul in 2006.
Okay.
When I moved to Ashland, and Paul was living here, and he was a friend of a good friend, and he was pushing this vibe drink that had acai berries and stuff, and was supposed to be the next miracle tonic, right? And so he was doing that. So we were all drinking that, of course. But Paul and I just struck up a friendship that was actually kind of more than our involvement with MKP. We just kind of started doing things together. We took a caregiver training together back in 2008 when the economy was crashing, and there wasn't any construction work, and so he and I took this caregiver training, and just were like two little kids in a in a classroom. We almost got thrown out because we were joking around so much and just having too much fun together. But we did get our certificates, and then I got a job caregiving for an elderly gentleman, and he and Anya came on board to help me. So we were doing that. Paul and I became hospice volunteers as well. And then we also, he and Anya and Judy and I started camping together. So, we had a few different things going on, along with being part of the Ashton Elders Lodge together at the time. So that started back in 06 and ran through, honestly, until Paul died, which I believe was 2000. I'm guessing it's 2011. I have it here.
Yeah, I think it was 12. Is what I want to
Is
say.
it 12? Okay,
Yeah.
2012. Okay,
Yeah.
so then, and
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well,
What a
yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Welcome, Frank. Glad you're with us.
Yeah.
So,
Hi, Frank. Sorry about that. As I said, Tom, when you invited me, Bent was away for a little bit over a week, and whatever her agenda was today was my agenda.
right, I understand. No, we're glad you're able to make it. So I want to direct our thoughts into the elder space for a moment, and then possibly into the ritual elder discussion. But Bill, would you talk about how the journey from your getting involved initially? When did you start moving into the space of elder, and what did that mean for you as you progressed?
So I went through in April of 04, and that June, if I remember correctly, because it was spring equinox weekend, I went through to my first elder gathering up at Stosh Thompson's ranch. And, I kept hearing men talk about elder this, elder that, and every time I'd ask the question, so who's an elder and how do you become an elder? Because I already knew I was an elder. I was 59 years old when I made my weekend. And so that elder weekend at Stosh Thompson's ranch put me in touch with elderhood in MKP and in the Northwest, and I met a bunch of men that I could relate to directly, and not only from the United States, but also from Canada and other places around the world. So it was a good experience for me, and that's where I knew I needed to bring my energy, even though I was focused and called to the lodge as my primary what I wanted to do. I was going to be an elder in the lodge. There was no doubt about that. So that's me.
Thank you. Thanks. And Nelson, did you have that same sense? How old were you when you first did your weekend?
Well, I was 47.
Okay. So when did you start moving into the elder path as we talk about it?
Maybe when I was about 5.
All right, that's a wrap. I think we're done now. That's perfect.
No, I'm serious.
You got my attention.
Yeah.
It was I was told more than once that I was an old soul, and anyway, was always taking on, I don't know, the leadership role or whatever, and at school and high school and all of that stuff. And anyway, at work. And so when I got engaged with our center in the Northwest, it was like, because I already had the gift of the elder. It was just I was drawn to that end of things anyway. I wasn't anyway. So that's how I got. 'Cause, 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 drawn towards the elder thing was just because I was naturally already there. And then actually it was 2004 when Bill came to the elder thing at Stasha's, is that I sat for ritual elder. And I had been on the co-leader path for what, I don't know, 2.5 years. And so I had been on it with Tim Clark. There was a couple other men that were on the co-lead path. And I was at Tim Clark's, who was a really great guy from Seattle in our center. And he got a not yet. And here I had staffed almost every training with this guy and had seen who he was and his capabilities and stuff. He got a not yet. And I was flabbergasted. And I just, like, I didn't understand what I want to say was, the whatever it was it took to get in to be a co-leader was not in my realm of like, shit, if this guy doesn't get in, I'm going anyway. So it was so I shifted right then, and I started thinking about ritual elder, because we didn't have a ritual elder per se. We had Pete Kroll that were acting like he was our first one that we voted in as a ritual elder, but we really didn't have the program really was just getting going. Jack Graff at the time down in San Diego was just really putting it together around nationally. And so it was all kind of happening. And so I wanted to be a ritual elder because I knew my gifts could show up in that role. And so I sat in 2004 when I was 54. And at the time they were talking a lot about 55 being an elder, which I didn't understand. Why don't we putting limits on or a date or years or whatever it was. And anyway, so I sat. There was 9 ritual elders from other centers around, and Jack Graff was there. And so Frank Rodriguez and I sat that summer. And anyway, I got the green light. And Jack Graff goes, Nelson, he said, I want you to promise me that you will not, do a weekend as ritual elder until you're 55, right? And so I had to, so in that summer I was 54, but I would be 55 in December, right? I didn't want to wait another whole year. And I said, fine. And so the event's over. I'm now a ritual elder. And anyway, so our training in November, they couldn't get a ritual elder, right? And so I get a call, says, do you want to be ritual elder? And now I'm really in this pickle, right? And I told, I forget who it was at the time. Anyway, I told him, I said, I told Jack I couldn't do it. So anyway, I wound up doing it. So it was just it was like, so that's, my elder was like needed on call. I'm there,
Thank you. Great story. And Bill and Pat, feel free to jump in if I'm posing a question, but so the arc for you I find that fascinating. So the first elder gathering that you're going to is the one where Nelson is actually sitting to become ritual elder. Where was that path for you then? How much longer before you stepped into the RE position?
So I did trainings continuously from the time I did my training through 2010, and I was working with Sawyer Robertson, who actually did my my PNR ceremony on my weekend. I was working with him and learning from him and heading toward becoming a water pourer when in 2010, Robert Kroll gave me a call and said, hey, we don't have a ritual elder for this upcoming training and we need one. And I've tried to get guys come in from outside and can't find them and same old stuff. And we want you to be a ritual elder. And I said, well, I don't know that I can do that. He said, well, what would it take for you to do that? And I said, well, I definitely have to talk to Sawyer because he's my teacher. And I'd want to talk to a ritual elder. And at that time, one of the men in my community, Larry Johnson, was a ritual elder. And I had asked him if he'd give me some mentoring. And he said yes. And so after talking to both of them, they both agreed that my being a ritual elder for that weekend seemed like a good thing to do and that I had the energy, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's how I first got involved. And, 50.
You froze up, Bill. Your connection is a little dicey.
Yeah, it
There you
is.
go. Yeah,
It-
no problem.
There you go.
Thank you. So what year was that then that you actually did that first one?
2010.
In 2010. Yeah, so that's just 1 year before I did my weekend. So that's great. Yeah. Pat, did you have questions or a question that you wanted to pose to either one of these guys?
No, I'm just really enjoying the conversation. I
I
have
am too.
one.
Yeah.
I have a particular one particular question when we come to that. Maybe I can just put that out there now. My moving beyond just being ritual elder, but being an elder in our culture is something that interests me because we North Americans don't have a guidebook for that. We lost our elders when the Industrial Revolution started. Back in the 1700s when men moved from the farms into the cities. And that sense of elderhood pretty much disappeared for North Americans. So, here we are at that age and of that mindset. And I'm just interested on your thoughts on what does it mean to be an elder in our culture, which is unique. It's not Native American. It's not, South American indigenous. It's us. And, I think we're all discovering what that is a day at a time. So I'm just interested in your thoughts on that.
That's a great question, I think. Either of you want to step into that space, and if you want to also maybe speak about what you think Paul how he might have responded to that question, I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I'll respond is that for myself, I really feel like it's the maturing that goes on and the empathy for life, the empathy and the grace around life, and having that kind of core belief that life is unfolding as it should naturally, but separating that from the cultural story in our North America as white men, or is so important to having the experiences of what works and what doesn't work, and then being able to share that, hold it with people, that creates a container of safety, and so it's a journey that for me has been very rewarding. And I don't know, maybe I'm not answering the question well, but it's just so important for the elder journey is to hold that the beauty in life, the ugliness in life, and be able to find the joy and the compassion within that, to let it unfold, and to, you know, be able to call a spade, to let the flower unfold, and you know, not get caught up in the cultural story of what really is you know, moving us forward. So
Yeah.
So I'll second that and agree with what Nelson has said. And for me, the one thing that I've really missed all the time I was a ritual elder was having men come to me and asking for what I've got to share. I shared a lot on the weekends, but outside of the weekends, there was none of that. So our culture is not set up so that younger people come to older people to ask for what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the missing, and I haven't yet figured out how to get beyond that except for one way, and that is being the man that I am and living the way I believe I need to live. And then men occasionally will make a comment to me and I'll have an opportunity to discuss it more with them. But that's the only way I've learned as an elder, is by being totally alive in the moment.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
And that's what drew me to Paul on the weekends, because Paul was totally alive, and he was connected intimately and very confrontationally at times on the weekends, that was powerful and moved men to get out of their shell and really get in touch with their emotions in a very good way. And that's part of the reason he was a mentor to me, just being the man he was. And Nelson as well has been a mentor to me at my request, and I've learned a lot from him as a ritual elder.
Thank you, Bill.
So just bringing in Paul again, is like Bill said, you know, there was an aspect of Paul's leadership that was, and being an elder, that was just, he did not want to follow the rules, right? So whatever it took to move the mountain, Paul was in. I mean, and he could do it, right? I mean, that's why he was such a magician on the carpet, is that there was no box. He was outside of the box when he stepped on the carpet, and he would go wherever it needed to go. And so it was more than once Paul would come off the carpet and I would go get him, and I'd say, Paul, you can't do that. And I say, you can't say that to that guy, whatever. And I said, when this is done, you're going to go back out there and you're going to clean it up, because Paul could move the mountain and whatever it took. And sometimes he had to clean it up. And it was just,
Yeah.
yeah.
No fun.
Yeah.
I find myself thinking about something I've heard you say before, Nelson, that one of your sort of commitments as an elder, and I think as a ritual elder, is to look for a way to give a man a win.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've always understood that in terms of something that I would do for someone else. But I think what I'm hearing both of you say is that part of that can be just you being the man that you are, and exposing that quality of who you are to the man can be a way of giving a man a win, right? The win of being in your presence or experiencing. That's what I'm hearing you describe Paul as. Just by knowing him, it was a win just to be connected with him or in his presence.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Frank, I want to bring you in here if you choose. Do you have thoughts about or questions you want to ask either of these men?
I have some thoughts. I think, you know, based on what was said, I mean, the thing that I've sort of been experiencing is that I'm in this project a lot shorter than all of you. I came in 2015, and I suppose really what it is that there's a touch of what Nelson said, is that I've always been a sort of an old soul, that I was always older than I was. You know, I was 25 when I was 18, and I was like 45 when I was 35 in terms of how people sort of saw me and how they reacted to me. So I always had that sort of older sort of energy. But in my case, it was very much sort of warrior energy. It was like, get the fuck out of the way and coming through type of stuff. And I think that's the thing, as I've got older, it's getting to that point of actually being able to stand in the middle and actually trying to lean into what you lean into as you require. And that's when I'm in that space, that's when I get questions. I don't get questions, or I don't get asked anything if I'm sort of in sort of my default sort of warrior mode, right? And it's when I actually sort of relax and I sort of ground myself, that's actually when all of a sudden people start asking questions. And actually a great story with Bill is that I was on a carpet, and I was like, I was getting to the stage where I started to know what I was doing as opposed to not knowing what I was doing. And I was leading the carpet, and I triggered two men on the carpet, right? Like seriously triggered them. And both of them went to Bill and came up to me after and said, you know, I was really pissed off at you, but Bill took me outside and I hugged a tree and I felt a lot better, and thank you for what happened. So it was like, that was a big lesson for me from the point of view of what the elder energy is about regrounding people, because we all get triggered all the time. And that was, you know, and I get triggered myself. So, you know, the more I sort of try to go there, the more I think that I become more open, and men see me as being more open. So that's one side of it. The other thought that was on my mind is that I think there's a generational thing going on, right? In that if you take, you know, I'm going to sort of say, I'm sort of, could be way off here, but I'm going to sort of say like 35 plus, men who are 35 plus now are in a different mindset than men who are under 35. And I have found men who are under 35 way more willing to actually ask questions and come and sort of ask for perspective than that, you know, perspective that an elder can give. You may be right or you may be wrong, but it's perspective. And I just noticed that's something I've noticed with younger men, is that they're way more open than men who are sort of 35 plus. And I just wonder what that is in terms of society that actually has driven that. And that's a sort of a general observation I have about it. So, yeah, I'm in with that lot.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm mindful of our time, and I think we probably are getting toward the end of our conversation, but I do want to allow both Nelson and Bill, if you have some concluding thoughts you want to share and or final thoughts about Paul, please feel free to do that. Or Pat, did you have another word coming out? Did I see a movement towards another question?
Well, just Frank just mentioned generational, and I'm just thinking of generational going the other way. Whereas, you know, we're all our father's sons, and we inherited a story. And more than a story, we inherited an energy from our ancestors, particularly our fathers, probably. And I'm just interested, maybe just briefly, how we have inherited that and how we have maybe moved that story forward in our own lives.
That's a good question, I think, Pat. I know for myself is that growing up, I was the youngest of three, and my dad was a blue-collar electrician worker, and you know, my mom stayed home, and so we were not, you know. So with my dad did everything with his hands, and my dad was pretty sharp, and so the gift that he gave me was how to do things with my hands and think about how the thing is going to go together, come apart, and go back together. or what you need in order for structure, balance, da da blah blah blah. So I grew up with that, and as angry as I was with my dad because he really had a box around me, because I was really good at sports. I was good in a lot of things, but I couldn't do them because I had to do, feed the cows, feed the horses, do all of this other stuff that he felt that was important, right? So there was a lot of anger. But what I know now is that some of my best gifts are with my hands. And so my dad lives through me, through my hands. I have his exact hands. The way that his hands looked, my hands look like that. But what I've shifted is the internal space of the box. The box isn't there anymore. The anger's not there anymore. And so the gift that I'm giving now is back to the invitation of how somebody else can win. And I love that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Thank
Great.
you.
So my dad was a Navy pilot during World War II when I was born, and an absolute perfectionist, an incredibly adept individual, and I was the oldest of four, and unfortunately my dad never knew his dad, and his mother was an only mother at a time when it was not appropriate for women to be in the workforce the way that they were later, and so it was a tough upbringing for my dad, and as a result, I didn't find any of this out until he was almost dead and gone, and as a result, he was very demanding, a total perfectionist, and I could do nothing right. But the good news is he was a traveling salesman, so he wasn't around home a lot. And I had two grandparents, my Nana and Bapa on my mom's side, who were wonderful role models and incredibly beautiful elders. And my dad's mom, later in her life, within 5 years of her passing, and I got together and spent some time, and I got to appreciate what a wonderful woman she was as well, even though her son didn't have that opportunity when he was a young boy. So the upbringing I had was a classic, what I would call privileged white upbringing, and upper middle class is what Dad considered us to be. And so, the culture that I was raised in did not prepare me for the reality of life. However, it did set me up to find out how privileged I was. And I've learned a lot in the Mankind Project coming from that place of privilege. And I thank Paul for some of the teachings that he's given me around multiculturalism. And I thank Nelson as well for the example he set and what he shared with me, and all of my brothers. So that's me.
Thank you, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to speak for myself on how much I've appreciated just being able to participate in the conversation, and I count myself truly blessed to have all of you in my life. Nelson was the very first man outside of my I group. I sat in an I group for about 3 months before I did my weekend. But the first MKP man, first voice I'd heard of anybody outside of my I group was Nelson, checking in the pre-weekend interview, and then before I did my weekend, and then he sat with me in the King's chair, and it's very important memories for me in the work, along with all the other great memories that have come since then. So it's truly a gift to be with all of you men today, and I think this would be a valuable contribution to this archive we're putting together honoring elders. So please accept our honoring to the two of you on behalf of everyone in the Northwest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
been a privilege indeed. All right.
Thank you.
I am
All right.